Welcome back to another episode of Homerik. In today's video, we're going to talk about what makes a monster. This is the tale of many monsters throughout time, about their creators and their relation to their creations, the reasons for creating said creation, and what was the final outcome. Is it really the creation that was the monster, or the creator? In this video, I'm going to be referencing the books of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Robert Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray. When we think of a monster, we think of a being with malicious figures about their appearance. We think of a beast of supernatural nature. Now, what this doesn't shed light on is the actual nature of the beast itself. What is within inside the creature? And to do that, we must look into the minds of the creator. The masterful work of these three authors recognizes the nature of true fear. It could come through science, moral transgression, parasitism, duality, and the crisis of identity. When we get into studying the mind of the creator, this is vitally important. We look at them as a sort of parent figure to the creation known as the monster. It is either through a scientific, medical, or physiological or emotional way that the creator becomes the parent. And for the purpose of creation was by other means than the normal way of creating or procreating. To seek another route, to seek to play God. Let's take a look at Victor Frankenstein. Victor Frankenstein created his monster out of pride or out of the curiosity for science, or to heal the faults of the human body, to understand more. But what became of Frankenstein was much more than what he had intended. Frankenstein was so ugly that he could not be accepted into society. And there lies the greatest revolt. With Dr. Henry Jekyll, we see a man who was conflicted about the spirituality of his soul. One who decided to take measures so far as to secede his evil counterpart from his good self. Of course, this only created Mr. Edward Hyde, the physical embodiment of evil itself, of pure, malevolent intent. And in the picture of Dorian Gray himself was corrupted by a philosopher by the name of Henry Wotton. This philosopher sought to impart wisdom, malevolent wisdom, into the innocent and naive soul of Dorian Gray. And as Dorian Gray grew corrupted and blackened, he grew a fervor for sin. Ultimately, in the pursuit of immortality, his soul was trapped within the painting of himself, which turned and aged, while his body did not. Now, the key to all of this, when it comes to the creator or the creation itself, is relatability. This relatability brings a bond, a deep sense of understanding to the nature of the monstrosity. As for the reason for creation, the desire to create is not always shared or similar to the original intent. Each of these creators were motivated by different things. Victor Frankenstein wanted to amend the frailties and shortcomings of the human condition. Victor Frankenstein realized that a man who aspires to a place beyond his natural formation here on Earth will live a life of constant struggle. Had the Doctor considered what he was creating or the repercussions of his actions, he could have prevented the torture he was destined to experience. In Dr. Jekyll's experiment, his reason was to remove this corrupted evil within all of us. Of course, experimenting on himself first. And what became of Dr. Jekyll was also Mr. Hyde. And unfortunately, through his actions, Dr. Jekyll only produced an evil incarnate of himself, without actually removing the evil that lingered within him. And during the creation of Dorian Gray's painting in the beginning of his book, Dorian is being painted by his artist, Basil, who loves Dorian and loves to paint his beautiful figure. It is here where the creation of painting Dorian was not intended to be the curse that would soon be to come. And it was only after being under Lord Henry's watch. The start of the curse for Dorian Gray came when Lord Henry began to implant a corrupted and malicious concept of the world inside Dorian's mind. So there are 3 phases to Dorian, the most complex of the 3 that I will be speaking of today. The beginning starts with the creation of Basil Hallward's painting of Dorian Gray. After the painting of Dorian's innocence, Lord Henry Wotton is the person who corrupts Dorian's soul. And it is the last and truly transformative part, where Dorian takes it upon himself to include sin by any means necessary into his life, and to continue this fervor and blacken his soul further. This is when Dorian will sentence his soul for immortality in exchange for the changing of his paintings. Now, part of the monster arc is really the interesting appeal of the monster itself. It's many times never the creator or the process of the creation itself, but the result of that creative process. Frankenstein, a staggering being visually, and disturbing and so ugly. Within him was a beautiful soul that was betrayed. Frankenstein was taught to love, but forbidden the kindness from others. He was taught to trust and accept, but never received such trust and accept for himself. And he was taught to understand where others would never understand him. This curse of abandonment from society, from Victor Frankenstein, his parental guide, it broke him. And it turned the good spirit, that beautiful soul inside, into an evil one which sought revenge out of anger and hate onto others around him. With the power of Edward Hyde, Mr. Hyde was an influential figure to Jekyll, one which was quite literally his own self. And it was because of Hyde that made Jekyll descend into that realm of madness. In the book, should the power of voluntary change be forfeited, Dr. Jekyll would be lost permanently to the power and influence of his counterpart, Mr. Hyde. Funny enough, Dr. Jekyll considered Mr. Hyde and himself to be completely 2 separate entities. This, of course, means that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde were soon to be realized as one person within the same body. And it came to a realization that Jekyll himself, in order to end Mr. Hyde's terror, would have to kill Mr. Jekyll. So we have this sense of impending doom upon the creator and the creation itself. With Dorian Gray, we see his blackened soul nurture even more sin into his life, while his visage of permanent beauty still lingers. Dorian is innocent in the beginning of this book, and he is infatuated with the philosophy of Lord Henry, of seductive personality. As Dorian grows, he meets Sybil, person he engages in romance with, and Dorian's still naive. He really is quite taken aback by Sybil, but he actually abandons her in favor of the philosophies Lord Henry was teaching him. And so Sybil leads down a path of great depression and ends her life by drowning. This is where the monster begins to grow inside of Dorian. Now, unlike Frankenstein or Dr. Jekyll, Dorian's story is very unique. It never plateaus, as does Frankenstein's or Jekyll's does. Rather, it continues down this descent, while the painting reveals all that happens to him and his soul. The key for Dorian Gray is knowing the monster he has become through the reaction of his painting revealed. Now, there is a similar series of events that happens in every monstrous story. There comes a time when the monster fails in regards to the creation process. The creator has an idea or a sense of curiosity. Then, the creator experiments, and through his experimentation, the creator then creates. It is here that the creature is born into existence, where the creature must learn to grow and assimilate to society. However, the creature fails to assimilate, and therefore it fails to survive. Were it not for the neglect from Victor Frankenstein, perhaps Frankenstein would have never been the case that it was. And had Jekyll realized the true nature of Mr. Hyde and ended it, he wouldn't have fanned the flames of what have ultimately led to his demise. And Dorian Gray develops an insatiable appetite for sin, which puts him on a warpath for immortality, one at which point is inerasable. That's all for today. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think makes a monster?